Welcome everyone to Growth Sessions. Today's guest is Paras Shah, Director of Omnichannel Shopper Marketing at Georgia Pacific. Paras, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it. I'd love to begin. A lot of people know of Georgia Pacific. You've been there for a little over 6 years. Would love to start with the evolution of your role at Georgia Pacific. And for all of the folks that are unfamiliar with Georgia Pacific brands, I'm sure that they know who the brands are, but don't know that it's under Georgia Pacific. If you could just let us know who those brands are and then the evolution of your time over the past 6 years there.
Definitely. First of all, Adam, thank you for having me on your podcast. Very excited for this opportunity. Again, my name is Paras Shah, and I lead Omnichannel Shopper Marketing, Retail Media, and Consumer Promotions at Georgia Pacific. For those of you who may not know who Georgia Pacific is, we are a paper company that manufactures household names, including Quilted Northern toilet paper, Angel Soft toilet paper, Brawny paper towels, Sparkle paper towels, Dixie plates and cups, and Vanity Fair napkins. Within the omnichannel marketing role, I lead retailer marketing across all fulfillment options, so not only in-store, but also pickup and delivery, which involves a lot of retail media. Prior to being in this role, I was actually leading the e-commerce sales team for key customers at Georgia Pacific, in which I was just helping build our presence on the digital shelf, helping develop e-commerce category growth plans, and driving our own e-commerce sales and share at various retailers.
What exactly is the difference between your role and Director of E-commerce and Omnichannel Marketing? Both of those actually sound relatively similar. If you unbundle that, how have the roles and responsibilities changed across the two in your perspective?
Part of this role, when I was working on the e-commerce sales team, I was primarily responsible for managing the retailer relationships, and was directly responsible for growing our e-commerce sales channels. So, your pickup and delivery fulfillment options, and growing the sales for those businesses, and working with retailers to build their e-commerce capabilities, thinking of how can you sell more, making sure that the right price is showing up and the right promotions are showing up and things like that. Whereas in the omnichannel marketing role, what I'm really focused on is more of the demand generation, right? Making sure that we are deploying the right levels of retail search marketing, making sure that we are partnering with retail media networks to drive those digital sales, and being a key driver of just adoption of pickup and delivery and getting into the basket.
And so within omnichannel marketing, the big buckets that consist of is Amazon advertising, Walmart Connect advertising, retail media across the long tail of retail media channels, Instacart advertising. Am I missing anything?
Yep. So basically think of all retail media, all marketing from Walmart, Amazon, Kroger, Albertsons, all the way down to your smaller long-tail regional grocers. So, and the club channel as well. So Sam's Club, Costco, all those customers combined.
As well as the programmatic side of that. So on-site sponsored ads and programmatic ads.
Yes.
And out of curiosity, so many people talk about programmatic advertising and the use of 1P data within the wonderful world of retail media. But I think one of the misnomers that so many people have is the lion's share of all of this advertising still lies in on-site sponsored ads or featured products, however you want to call it. But a lot of the growth is coming from the programmatic side. And so on the programmatic side, I'd be curious to know, like at the moment, what channels is Georgia Pacific touching right now, aside from some of the obvious?
Yeah, on the programmatic side, obviously, we've got a team of programmatic traders on buying all of our offsite inventory for our national media, but we also engage with retail media on the programmatic side, both self-serve and managed service, and we're working with them on-site as well as off-site, whether it's display banner ads, whether it's online videos. So I'd say it kind of spans the whole gamut. We're also looking at programmatic audio as well. So I would say that primarily, a lot of our programmatic efforts span across all tactics that are offered in the programmatic space, as well as across all kinds of customers, on-site and off-site both.
And so when we were chatting earlier, you're a self-described growth hacker. And I come from the wonderful world of technology, in which growth hackers are often a thing for somehow driving engagement on technology products or creative tactics for customer acquisition. I don't normally hear of growth hackers at large manufacturing CPG companies like a Georgia Pacific. How do you harness your inner growth hacker every single day in your role?
Yeah, Adam, let me kind of give you some background in terms of what led to this mindset of growth hack. I came into my current role leading omnichannel marketing in June of 2020. And while we started to develop strategies to win in curbside pickup and delivery prior to the pandemic, COVID really accelerated the e-commerce adoption in the paper category by 3 to 4 years. And there was a sizable infrastructure expansion during 2020 to accommodate for curbside pickup availability and home delivery. And the paper category was obviously a big beneficiary of that as our product surged throughout the pandemic. I'm sure everyone was rushing out there to buy toilet paper, and that drove that adoption of pickup and delivery. We had to really accelerate our marketing efforts to win in the online grocery fulfillment options by ensuring we have product on shelf, the right content to communicate our assortment, and retail media support to keep our brands in front of the shopper as they choose what to buy. And so with the shift to e-commerce and the rise of retail media, this really gave GP an opportunity to better target our core consumers at key retailers with retail media networks. A lot of our thinking started to revolve around how do we get onto the shopper's list, get into the shopper's cart, whether that's the physical or digital cart, and then make our way into the shopper's heart. And this is what drove me to develop a growth hacking mindset, or what some people call growth marketing. So basically developing asset light and cost-effective marketing plans to help drive share of voice and sales and market share. I'd say that we all know intuitively that growth is good, right? It creates strong businesses, creates new opportunities, and it really excites people. And without growth, companies are not able to deliver continuous increases in sales and returns for shareholders. But where does the growth come from, especially in extremely large companies where a reasonable growth rate can mean millions or even billions of dollars in additional revenue per year? So the approach I took with the growth hacking mindset was to focus on granularity by breaking down the high-level strategy into its smallest and most relevant components. From there, just really focus on uncovering pockets of opportunities where we needed to dig down to deeper levels of our business. So in a nutshell, we need to analyze our business at a very granular level, both in how we allocate our money and our time. And this approach requires a lot of experimentation. There's a couple examples. There's one retailer that we worked with on understanding which search keywords on their site drove highest rates of conversion and new households for our business. And then we used that data and the insights from that test to capitalize on opportunities at just other retailers by basically looking at what we saw converted well, what didn't convert well, and then how can we take those insights to activate, whether it's promotions or activate against other on-site or off-site campaigns based on the data that we uncovered from some of our key relationships with customers who were willing to share this data. And then I also did a lot around just driving conversion rate optimization by making slight tweaks to e-commerce presence, so optimizing product titles, testing various images, testing with and without promotions, changing product detail copy, and things like that, right? A lot of it was just experimentation that drove that growth hacking mindset. Because quite frankly, experimentation creates data, and data is actually at the start and heart of decision-making within Georgia Pacific and underpins how we determine what, where, and how we reach consumers across the channels that influence their decision-making.
You mentioned conversion rate optimization by being one of those pockets of opportunities. Do you think you can dive into a few of those others?
Yeah, a lot of what we looked at from a conversion rate optimization standpoint, we would look at the different paths in order to drive conversion among consumers. And so we broke it down into, in my mind, there's a few different, I'd say building blocks, right? So first of all, as consumers are trying to acquire information, a lot of what, we looked at was how do you make sure you have the right price and promotion out there? What we did from conversion rate optimization is, first of all, making sure what drives better conversion, a promotion versus a non-promotion. Surprisingly enough, a promotion is not always the best way to drive conversion. And so we would try to test and learn, does a promotion work? Does it help you see lifts in conversion rate or not? We also looked at primary product images. There was a lot of research that had gone on maybe 6-7 years ago around mobile-friendly images. And we looked at what can we do to help improve conversion rates. Do you have higher resolution images? Do you try to make sure that the images on mobile screens are more legible? We would look at things like keywords in the product titles and trying to understand what consumers search for, and try to make sure that the consumer and what they say and how they search is at the heart of product titles. We would also try to look at just communicating key benefits, trying to have a creative transformation of your reason to believe, showing products inside and outside of packaging, looking at videos and ratings and reviews. And so we would try to tinker with all the different elements that influence your promotions, your product images, your product titles, your product copy on the PDPs, or even your ratings and reviews, and use that to figure out how can we try to improve conversion rate, whether it's through better resolution of an image, having the right promotion, having different keywords in the title, which would help you have a different placement on the digital shelf.
Got it. And so these are all really, really powerful ways to, as you mentioned, improve conversion rate, but getting people to the PDP is obviously a huge task in and of itself. I'd love to learn high level, what are some unique growth hacky strategies that you use to get people to the PDP as efficiently as possible, beyond obviously the low hanging fruit of branded terms and really important flagship category terms? What are some ways that you've worn this experimentation hat to get people to those PDPs in order to get them to the convert?
Yeah, Adam, obviously what you just said is spot on, right? But the lower funnel tactics are sort of the first place you go to get people there. But I think that's where we had to think outside the box and look at, how do we leverage more of our media outside of search, outside of branding keywords and category keywords? How do you either go after long tail keywords where you know that people aren't searching for, but if you're present there, you're going to have a very high conversion rate? And then we would also look at just doing more targeted advertising through DSPs and using the DSPs to make sure we're going after the right segments and using those segments to try to win with the right shopper as well. We looked at email marketing, whether it's through the retailer or even testing with their own databases and using that as a way to try to get people to basically engage with their ads, whether it's on-site or off-site, and get them directly onto your PDP as well. So on-site was a big driver at a lot of key retailers, to making sure that the traffic that came to their site, we would be able to take that traffic and get on the PDP and get them to convert there. But then at the same time, we also want to help show category growth. That's something I was talking about earlier on. And with category growth being a key driver of our development with our retailers, we want to make sure that we're able to take a lot of offsite traffic, bring them to the retailer's website, and then whether that's through email marketing, whether it's through offsite media, through programmatic media, and then get them to basically come there and then try to convert from there. We also have where to buy capabilities across all of our retailer websites. And so we would see traffic go from our retailer websites directly from our brand websites to the retailer websites as well.
And when you think about category growth, is that your share within a given category, or is that expansion of TAM of the category? How do you think about that, and what levers do you pull to optimize for either of those?
Yeah, whenever we look at ways to drive category growth, the couple of things we look at is, number one, how do we get more people at the retailer who are already shopping to purchase at the retailer? And then two, how would we try to address the TAM and get people who have not shopped at the retailer and are shopping elsewhere to then come shop at the retailer as well? I think the low-hanging fruit is getting existing shoppers at the retailer to purchase that category, and then from there getting people who have not purchased at the retailer to get them to purchase there. So if I think about just some of our categories, toilet paper and paper towels, while toilet paper has a 99% penetration rate, they may be buying it from one channel where it might be discounted versus another channel where it might be higher priced. But if we're able to show that we have ways to help optimize the path to purchase and get that consumer to purchase at that specific retailer that they haven't purchased at before, that's going to help our retailers grow their business as well. And at the end of the day, a lot of what we're looking at from a category growth standpoint is, how do we source competitive shoppers into purchasing our products at our retailers? And I think that's another source of growth too, because if you're getting them to trade up within their current category and going from more of a mainstream or a private label product into a branded product, there's category growth there as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious to know, when we think about this category growth at a given retailer, how do you think about partnering with the retailer to drive both e-commerce and in-store sales? Within the world of omnichannel, to what extent does your hat touch in-store? And as the lines are blurring, how do you not naturally break down those silos as those lines are beginning to blur, and like ways in which retail media platforms are attributing in-store sales to an online ROAS? Very naturally, you're going to be talking to the retailer at a much more holistic level. I'm curious to know, when you talk to retailers about this category growth, is that in-store plus e-com, and how do the retailers think about that in that way?
And that's a great question. I'd say that when we first started this journey years ago, a lot of e-com was trying to win with those shoppers who primarily, prefer to shop via e-com. I think early on, a lot of retailers were scared that if they buy e-com, then they're going to stop going in-store to purchase. Right? And I think what we saw, I'd say over the last 4 years, so pre-pandemic, is that in fact, the omnichannel shopper, so the shopper who is shopping both in-store and online, is actually more valuable to the retailer than the in-store only shopper and the e-commerce only shopper. And so knowing that this omnichannel shopper who is shopping across fulfillment options based on the jobs that they need to have done, as they're shopping across different fulfillment options, it's imperative that we actually, as a CPG or as a marketer, think about how to engage with this shopper across the fulfillment options. With my team and my role, a lot of what I'm really focused on is making sure that we're able to get in front of the consumer across all fulfillment options so that when they are their path of purchase and when they go in store to become a shopper, they are actually purchasing our portfolio, whether it's in-store or through pickup or through delivery. And quite frankly, you have to appeal to them in very different ways across all of them. A good example, Adam, is if you think about like curbside pickup now, right? Like, traditionally, when you're in store to purchase, you're having to make your decision either by writing what's on the list that you brought into the store or you're making your decision at the shelf. With curbside pickup, you're actually seeing people spend more time building their list and their order in terms of what they want to purchase. And so now you have to be in front of that consumer a lot more frequently than you were before in order to convert there. And delivery is very similar in that people are building their home delivery order over the course of time, over 3 or more days. As they're building their order over multiple days, you need to be consistent in front of them as well. So having to engage with shoppers more frequently in order to influence that purchase, whether it's in-store or online, has been a big mindset shift for us. And that's something that we're trying to proactively engage with the retailers on, talking to them around how can we develop the right support plans in order to win across all fulfillment options so that we can help them grow and retain those loyal shoppers as well.
How do you know that people are taking longer to build the list? Where is that data coming from?
I think a lot of what we're doing is a couple of things. One, we're partnering with retailers, first of all, to understand from them how our consumers using their digital shopping tools, whether it's the website or the mobile apps. We've heard from multiple retailers that people are taking longer to build these pickup and delivery orders. It's not something you're just building, in its entirety at one time, as well as, we've done our own research just to understand like how people shop and how they're shopping differently online versus in store. And like I said, data is sort of at the start and heart of every decision we make within GP. And so knowing the data is at the start and heart, uncovering these data and insights in partnership with our consumer insights and shopper insights team within the organization, as well as partnering with the retailers and bringing them together and uncovering these insights really helps us figure out ways we can go to market differently as well. But I'd say at the end of the day, we've heard this both from our own research internally as well as from the retailer as well.
Anecdotally, it makes total sense. And I don't think I've heard people distill it that way. I think of all the times that I've gone to the grocery store, I make my own lists 15 minutes before I left, or I asked my wife to send me her list. I know we have a young baby and we've never ordered something like Instacart more in the past year once you have a young child, and we're building our basket over a few days. Exactly. And that basket building experience lends itself more to that same in-store browsing and walking the aisle experience. Like all those impressions that I'm generating to the retailer site in order for me to build the basket are opportunities for a product to show up and engage with me. So I totally get it. And I think that's a really interesting perspective in how people can think about interacting with retail media platforms and how brands should think about advertising on them. Is that whereas if I think about something like Amazon only, Amazon is more like spearfishing. I'll search for that one thing and purchase it. But if I'm thinking about categories like yours, in which Georgia Pacific brands tend to be a basket building brand for the most part, that's when I and you, primarily you, are going to be wanting to leverage the full suite of capabilities of one of these retail media channels in order to capture my attention at any touch point along that basket building journey.
Definitely. And Adam, just to add to that, another interesting insight we've uncovered is that people are shopping differently across the fulfillment options, even though it's the same household. What they might have been purchasing in store was a smaller pack of toilet paper because they're going to the store more frequently. Now, all of a sudden, when pickup is available, you have to think about it this way. It's not a matter of what fits in the shopping cart. It's a matter of what fits in the cart trunk. In general, if you look at pickup orders, they're typically larger basket sizes than in-store because people are shopping in a different mindset and then they're trying to stock up, right? What we found with home delivery is that it's the exact opposite, where there's smaller basket sizes because you're doing deliveries more often as well. So think of it from the standpoint of how do people shop across fulfillment option and what is the job that they need to be done in that order? And that's driving a lot of their purchasing habits versus how they used to shop. So I would say the emergence of e-commerce is not only they had a fundamental shift in how companies and manufacturers and marketers operate, but it's also changed how consumers shop and what they shop and what they buy as well. You're seeing a lot fewer impulse purchases, but you're seeing a lot larger basket sizes too.
You're much more of an expert than me in many of the retail media platforms here, but I know that Walmart actually went through a process over the past several years in which you could have a unique advertising strategy depending on the way of fulfilling, whether it be in-store pickup or delivery. And again, based on my understanding, Walmart unified all of this. So it's one advertising strategy, one campaign that you're running, agnostic of the method of acquiring the goods. What retail media platforms now allow you to create those unique strategies?
Walmart did take this approach a few years ago. Most retailers now, at least most major retailers, moved to this unified approach across the grocery channel, the club channel, mass channel. Multiple retailers are moving to this unified approach where you can shop however you want and then determine how you want your order sent to you. Do you want a few things shipped to you while others are ready for pickup? Or do you want to schedule a delivery while you have some pickup and some shipments? And you can also build a list to go in store and get what you need as well. So I would say that this is actually happening across many retailers across just about all channels, because what they're realizing with the unified approach like Walmart took is that this shopper who shops across multiple fulfillment options is more valuable, right? So they want to be able to create their digital shopping capabilities, whether it's their website, whether it's their mobile app, such that they're able to appeal to the shopper who wants to shop across all fulfillment options.
So do you think this unified fulfillment approach is a good thing for the advertiser?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question, right? Is it a good thing or not? Because one of the challenges you run into is, as an advertiser, you want to win there. You want to be in that unified basket because e-commerce also locks in the high rate of loyalty, right? And so you're oftentimes having to make sure you are in that basket because most consumers are going to click on what they purchased before, and it's going to be on their recently purchased list. So they're going to want to purchase what they purchased before. So you want, as an advertiser, you want to be present there across every marketing touch point available to make sure the consumer chooses you. But at the same time, you also have to think about just the acquisition cost and what the lifetime value of that shopper is as well. And so I think that's the next iteration of a lot of what we're trying to focus on is how profitable is this customer to us, at what channels, and for what brands, so that we can create a very segmented strategy.
One of the very natural extensions of all of this is this notion of incrementality, and everyone seeks out incrementality, and it's very much a loaded term. A lot of people have their own definitions and ways of measuring this. I'd love to know your perspective. Like, how do you define incrementality and how do you measure and try and execute against it at Georgia Pacific?
That's a great question, Adam. I'd say that at its core, incrementality obviously defines how much extra volume you sold as a result of your marketing. And the way that I look at incrementality at Georgia Pacific, there's 3 key ways to drive incrementality, right? It's number 1, increasing the number of new households that are brought in. So looking at metrics like new to brand in the e-commerce space. And then number 2, increasing purchase frequency, getting the shopper to purchase something more frequently than what is in a typical purchase cycle. And third is just increasing your basket size or your AOV or average order value. So you're able to convince shoppers to purchase larger pack sizes. And those are the 3 things that we look at in order to drive the incrementality. Now, in terms of your question on measuring, like that's the $1 million question right there. We look at it in a few different ways. So first and foremost, I think ROAS is an obsolete metric. And it's very transactional nature. We're often reported to in ROAS by our retail media networks, but we often overlook the ROAS because, like I said, it's very transactional. It says nothing more than what was the price that something was purchased at divided by how much you spent to drive that conversion. It tells you nothing about incrementality. And so sort of the approach we took here is we started to look at marketing mix modeling, and we look at ROIs as the single source of truth that we use to evaluate retail media, because it can help us assess effectiveness versus other tactics in our national media mix. As we invest in retail media to grow our e-commerce marketing efforts, we're able to understand whether those tactics are helping us drive incremental volume, especially when you compare it against a lot of your national stuff like TV, online video, national programmatic and media, and things like that. So we look at MMM as sort of our single source of truth, but then we also try to look at just primary and secondary metrics to assess incrementality. And some of the primary metrics we look at when we're prioritizing a campaign is incrementality, specifically from the standpoint of iROAS. Can we see what the incremental return on ad spend is? And crazily enough, Adam, not all incrementality or IROS metrics are reported the same across retailers. And so that's where I've partnered with my analytics team to work very closely with them on making sure that we're able to assess the incrementality methodologies and make sure we're aligned with those methodologies so that we're able to then make sure that we're able to run campaigns and assess how much volume response we're getting from this campaign and how much of it's incremental as a result. Some of the secondary metrics that you look at, it's based on the objective of the campaign, but we look at share of voice. The new to brand, as I mentioned, increasing the number of new households is something that we look at. So we look at new to brand. We also want to look at cost per acquisition, because with cost per acquisition, oftentimes what we can see is that if cost per acquisition starts to go down, that means you're primarily subsidizing your base. So maybe we need to now start to ramp up our cost per acquisition and increase it to get more new households in. And then we also look at things like viewability and just our e-commerce share as well as secondary metrics. E-com share will help us make sure we're driving incrementality when our share grows. And then viewability, we know that higher rates of viewability is going to help us drive more click-throughs and engagement and conversions. And so viewability is something we use to make sure we're able to get more people to click and engage with our products too. So that's how we define incrementality within the company and then how we measure it as well.
All right, let's dive into a few of those. IROAS, how do you calculate IROAS?
With IROAS specifically, we try to look at it from a test control standpoint and make sure that your test cells obviously see a lift in sales versus your control, and making sure that we've got a control cell in place and then the test cell shows a lift. And what is that lift essentially, right? So we kind of subscribe to the test control methodology for an IROAS. Now, we've talked to some retailers who do test control, but what we found is that their control is actually something that's unrelated to the test cell. And so it kind of inflates the incrementality. But what we make sure to do is that the control cell has a direct correlation to the test cell, and then try to assess the sales lift against the control cell.
So top of mind, some really good examples that I think of when doing those is like turning on retargeting or off retargeting for a period of time. That's an easy one.
Yep.
Branded terms, turn on or off branded terms. These are two things like at the very bottom of the funnel. What would be other examples of these test and control cells to determine IROAS that you've employed?
We'll oftentimes look at programmatic, right? So we will run programmatic campaigns, specifically offsite programmatic media, to understand when we're running media, what kind of lift do you see in sales between two different segments? So we'll develop one test cell and one control cell with the same segment, and then try to expose the test cell to a certain number of impressions versus the control cell not seeing it, and then see what kind of lift we have there. Even with onsite, we try to look at test control and try to understand with those who didn't see it versus those who were exposed to it, what kind of lift there is in sales there too. So I would say that beyond just turning on and off branded keywords and the lower funnel opportunities, you can still do upper funnel by looking at those who are exposed versus not exposed, as well as those who saw a certain frequency of ads versus those who got the control frequency, and see if there's a higher lift in sales there.
I'm sure the sales reps at any one of these retail media platforms hate it when you say this. They're like, come on, man. Like, there's this notion of incrementality. How do you manage that?
Yeah, we've got a lot of pushback when we try to push on incrementality, just because right now, not all the retailers have incrementality built out.
In fact, many of them don't. You're talking about ways in which you make custom metrics for incrementality. I could talk to any brand agency or tool provider that has 8 different ways to calculate this.
Yes.
So no one has it built out, actually.
No one has built it out. And that's why I bring in my analytics team, and I try to have my analytics team assess the incrementality methodologies that a retailer will use. Some retailers, the more you probe on it, will be able to provide sales lift reporting. They'll provide some kind of an IROAS or some kind of an incremental sales lift to us. And so I work hand in hand with my analytics team to make sure that they're blessing the methodology and approach that the retailer is using to measure, and then using that as a way forward. You'd be surprised at the number of retailers who do challenge and push back. I said, like, most don't do it already. And while they don't, those are the conversations we're having right now with retailers, is that, hey, if you want us to continue investing, you have to show us how this is incremental to our business. And that's why, Adam, we look at MMM as the single source of truth, because with MMM, you're able to understand what kind of incremental volume response you're getting from all your media investments. And if someone's asking me to move dollars from something that is currently incremental to my business to something where they can't even show the incrementality, I have a hard time making that shift, because it may be decretive to my business. I want to make sure that we've got the right methodologies in place, the right measurements in place to make this happen. Quite frankly, there's some retail media networks, I can't say which ones, but like we've pulled back investment with them because they're not able to provide us with the right measurement KPIs or with the right incrementality metrics. But what we've done is we've said, hey, let's partner together and talk about how can we develop the right incrementality methodologies so that we can measure and see how effective and successful this is for both of our businesses.
And then the one thing that I'd be concerned about if I was in your shoes, specifically with on-site sponsored ads, and if we're talking about like category terms as an example, is many of these retailers obviously have a flywheel effect between sponsored and organic. Like, to what extent, when you take these control tests and turn off ads, are you concerned about dropping organic and like completely tanking a given SKU, given that you've effectively let out all the gas on that flywheel? Is that a concern of yours?
It's not a concern necessarily. It's something we consider. I would say that just doing regular incrementality tests is a great way to drive consistency in verifying that a specific tactic or channel's performance, that it works. You're going to uncover almost real-time insights, and you're going to collect a lot of just granular data that can help you identify the new pockets of opportunity. And with the testing that we're doing, we're able to understand the real impact of our efforts and then change our plans accordingly. While we may make some changes and it may impact our flywheel short term, the end goal is to make sure that we're making these changes and doing these tests to grow the flywheel over the long term. So I think with us, we're not looking so much at the short term, but we're focused on the long-term growth and profit potential. And if that means we sacrifice some short-term performance, that's okay, because really at the end of the day, we know that retail media is here to stay. We know that e-commerce is going to be here in perpetuity as well. So we want to make sure that we can have the right plans in place to grow our business over the long term. And that requires us to really, I'd say, disrupt the flywheel in the short term.
How do you think about bringing external data sets into these platforms to measure incrementality?
We do evaluate external data sets to inform incrementality, oftentimes like looking at test versus control methodologies from retail media networks or business partners. But I'd say with the emergence of clean rooms, we're able to look at volume response and incrementality a lot more closely. Clean rooms are still in their infancy right now, but like we can look at advertising activity from Amazon Marketing Cloud to identify what pockets of segments are responding to our ads, and then purchasing against those segments versus not purchasing against segments that are not responding to the ads. And we're able to change our strategies accordingly. I think what I'm seeing is that more and more SaaS platforms now, they're starting to leverage API integrations with retailers in order to help measure incrementality for brands as well.
How do you foresee the future of clean rooms evolving? Obviously, Amazon Marketing Cloud is at the forefront of this, and many brands not only now have access, but know how to query the data in an insightful way, and obviously is going to become more actionable. I saw, and I'm sure you saw, AWS most recently announced that they're doing almost like clean rooms as a service. They're AWSing AMC, which is a classic Amazon thing to do. How do you see this evolving?
I think with cookie deprecation on the horizon, it's going to change the way that everyone has to go to market. It's a pretty well-known fact that people are going to change. It's just a matter of when. But I think right now, it's important for brands to just start to find ways that they can work within clean rooms and determine how can they bring together consumer segments with an ID that can be activated against. I think every retailer is going to try to build out their own clean room as they expand their own ecosystems. And as they build out those ecosystems and expand access to the clean room, it's going to be important for each retailer to basically be able to justify through a clean room how they are a better investment versus other clean room opportunities. So over time, I also see clean rooms starting to come together in the form of bunkers, and basically building bunkers of clean rooms that will enable multiple retailers to come together who are disparately spread out across the country and use that as a way to help grow their total business as well.
Did you say bunkers or bonkers?
No, sorry, bunkers, B-U-N.
Bunkers. Is that a data term, or is that just your way of characterizing the space?
So it's more of my way of characterizing the space. So essentially, think of bunkers when you have multiple clean rooms, and as multiple clean rooms start to come together, you're going to have different data sets from different clean rooms brought together with one ID against all of them. And I've heard this term before and it couldn't resonate with me. I don't remember where I heard it, but it's stuck to me because if you think about militaries having bunkers, it's bringing together different groups of people together under that. And I feel like that's how clean rooms will also come to life too over time.
Makes sense. So I was really intrigued by when Amazon made their announcement of the AWS clean rooms, and I think I can disclose this, like it's publicly available information. We had a chat with the AWS Cleanroom team, and one of the questions that we asked them, not the AMC team, but the AWS Cleanroom team, one of the questions we asked them was, how do you bring data into the AWS Cleanroom? They said that's the beauty of AWS Cleanrooms, is that you actually don't bring the data in. What we've created is an interoperable way to query data in everyone's own AWS S3 instance. That's effectively what AWS Cleanrooms have created, is the ability to, through private and secure SQL queries, talk to your bunker and my bunker, join with at a certain user ID once you've cataloged your data in the appropriate way. And I think that's really powerful. The limitation here is that you have to live in the world of AWS, and everyone doesn't live in AWS. And many retailers or many advertising companies view themselves competitive to Amazon and very intentionally do not live in AWS. So I think it's really compelling. And the way in which, I think you alluded to it great, and I'm probably going to steal your bunker metaphor, the way in which the bunkers talk to one another is very much TBD, but it's quite clear that there is a significant amount of data that needs to be interoperably transferred for brands to be able to activate and measure the effectiveness of their marketing and advertising in ways that haven't done before. And you mentioned cookie depredation is probably going to be the forcing function for everyone to continue to invest into this technology.
Yeah, definitely. Adam, I'd say you steal my bunker phrase, and I'm going to steal your interoperable phrase, right?
I'm just stealing it from Amazon.
No, I know.
So.
But I joke because that's exactly what it is, right? In the future, to your point, Amazon's built a killer technology, right? But at the same time, different clean rooms will have to be interoperable in order for media networks to coexist and to compete against what's out there. Because without the interoperability, you're just not going to have the data at scale that's going to enable marketers to effectively activate against.
Yeah. And if you're a brand owner, everyone is competing for your next dollar.
Yeah.
And you said it yourself, you've dialed back advertising at one of those retailers because they weren't able to show this level of measurement that you coveted that other retailers were able to show. So it's not a battle for ROAS, it's a battle for measurement of incrementality. Exactly. And ROAS is the lowest hanging fruit, easiest metric. It's a single spend over sales or sales over spend, whereas incrementality, as we've discussed, is a variety of complex ways through experimentation and testing that allow people to decide where their next dollar should be spent. And it's a challenge. There's a lot of technology trying to solve this problem for that very reason. So I think this has been awesome. I would love to finish off with a couple quicker questions. So, we are a technology company. As a brand owner, in many instances, you think about partnering with technology companies, building out expertise in-house, or working with agencies. Would love to know how Georgia Pacific thinks about when to partner, when to leverage services, and when to build out those capabilities on your own.
I mean, Georgia Pacific is very much of a hybrid model, right? So a lot of what we think about is how do we leverage the comparative advantages of different partners in the space, but then also develop our own comparative advantages as well. And so we know that we will always have to partner with external partners, whether it's SaaS companies or agencies, to bring the outside knowledge in to the company. But then we also want to make sure that we're developing comparative advantages within our own talent who know the brand and our business better than the agency does, so that we're able to have a happy medium. When you leverage the comparative advantages of two different sets of people, the agency as well as the internal people, you're going to be able to just drive more growth for the business. And so I think that we're going to continue operating in very much of a hybrid space. We're always going to have to rely on SaaS platforms, on agencies to help us think how to grow our business. And we're going to develop other problems to solve or have the restless discontent that we need solved. And so I think having that hybrid model where we have both hands on keyboard, but we also leverage external parties and vendors to help us accomplish and overcome some of those challenges that we have is the right model to move forward with.
And to wrap things up, looking into 2023, what would be your prediction for retail media?
That's a great question. There's a few things I've been talking about lately with people around retail media specifically in 2023. I'd say first and foremost, I think there's going to continue to be a proliferation of retail media networks as retailers just collect more shopper data and by driving just more mobile app downloads and just driving more digital shopping. And so with this continued proliferation of retail media networks, I think you're just going to continue to see both retailers as well as non-retailers get into the retail media space, which requires both endemic brands and non-endemic brands to participate in the space. I'd say the other thing is just improved measurement capabilities. We talked about this for a while. A lot of marketers are challenging the kind of measurement KPIs that are provided. It's not about ROAS anymore. It's more about incrementality. And so how do we get better measurement capabilities and track KPIs more closely so that we can make sure that these investments are driving incrementality for our businesses? So I would say that I think 2023 will be a big year for RMNs to show how they can differentiate themselves with their measurement capabilities. A lot of my conversations with a lot of major retail media networks so far have been around their measurement capabilities and where they're going in 23, what they're doing differently, and how we can partner together. I feel like over the next year to 2 years, you're going to see a big transformation in the measurement space. I mean, we talked about clean rooms. I think there's just going to be more adoption of clean rooms by retail media networks as there's going to be shared data in the clean rooms to enable tracking across retailers and buying with third-party companies. So it's really this whole notion of the bunkers starting to be built. And as those bunkers are being built, I feel like you're going to have more of the interoperability across RMNs where they're not competing against one another. I also think CPMs and CPCs are going to start coming down because, quite frankly, that's a key driver of what's preventing more brands from leaning in with their national media investments. Every RMN is going after the national bucket, but the question oftentimes is, why should I pay 2 to 3x more when I can leverage my in-house programmatic trading team to do the same stuff? Or if I'm buying through a managed service capability, why would I pay a premium to what I know the media costs? You're starting to see CPCs come down because it's gotten to a point where it's not very profitable when certain CPCs, are so high. So how do we get you better about just bringing down costs so that RMNs can grow that share of the pie? And then finally, I'm actually a big proponent of in-store retail media. I think that's the next frontier on which retailers develop their retail media ecosystems. They dominated in the digital space over the last few years. But now that they've dominated digital, the question is how can they make sure to take advantage of the dollars closest to the point of purchase? 90% of your sales are still happening in store. And while a lot of the digital retail media to influence the path of purchase, how do you get people at the at-shop phase in store? And so I feel like in-store retail media will be that next frontier.
How do people justify the 2 to 3x higher CPMs?
From my observation so far, Adam, a lot of people are justifying it by saying that the data quality is better because it's first-party data versus third-party. And in talking with my peers at other companies, that's how they've leaned in with it. In some cases, they've said that they've had to lean in just because the retailers are demanding those investments. But that's where I think that there's been so much pushback in general from enough CPGs to where you're starting to see CPM slowly come down because it's not sustainable for companies. And they're starting to realize that as they're running more campaigns and realizing that they're not seeing the movement in sales and share like they had expected. So they can't continue to pay these very high CPMs or even CPCs for that matter.
To clarify a few things, when you said that the retail media networks will demand that they pay the spend, in many instances, that's a blend of JBP across all in-store shopper marketing spend, and you need to allocate a certain amount as an IO at this fixed CPM, which is the power that these retail media networks have and leverage of, hey, I have a really strong retail channel, and this is a huge channel for you. And if you want me to buy all your products, you'll spend. And it's tough to push back in those instances, right? Like, and I'm sure you're in your seat being like, yo, like, I can't afford these CPMs. This is crazy. And then the sales channel is going, hey, like, you got to spend. This is one of our largest channels. Sorry.
That's exactly it, Adam. As retailers are asking for more investment in the space, and with the higher CPMs, you're going to have obviously less reach or lower frequency, which impacts your ability to show volume response. It impacts your ability to actually move sales and share. If you're investing in these areas, but you're not able to see the movement in your sales and share, then people are going to start to look at alternative places to deploy those investments, whether that's in merchandising or whether that's in other forms of media. And so I think that enough people have pushed back on the CPMs and even in some cases in the CPCs based on the floor bids of some of these retailers, that the retailers are starting to change what they charge, how they charge, and they're trying to focus more on their measurement capabilities to show that they're able to get the outcome that they claim. And so I think that's where the CPMs and CPCs coming down need to be tied to the measurement capabilities, because if the retailers want to continue to command that premium CPM, then they have to show that this is incremental to the business, but that's not happening right now. And so without one or the other, you're not going to have a healthy business model in the future.
Definitely. Awesome. This was a fantastic discussion. Paras, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
In the next episode,
we waited a long time to become omnichannel, waited a long time to launch Amazon. In the past couple of years, I hear a lot from brands or founders that reach out and say, hey, we're launching a D2C brand. I think you're going to hear less and less of that and much more about just launching a brand. I think we're past the time where D2C can actually be a business model. You can't make something cheaply overseas and cut out the store and just put it online and undercut the mainstream brands. You can't do that anymore with a razor or a mattress. The paid social economics don't make sense. The importing doesn't make sense. You just can't do that. I think we're beyond the moment of D2C as a business model, and we're going to see less and less brands describing themselves as such, though it can still be a main distribution tactic like it was for us.
Join us in the next episode for a chat with Gabby Lewis, co-founder of Magic Spoon. The episode drops March 23rd. This is Growth Sessions, a podcast to fuel your e-commerce growth. Listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.